Today we're diving deep into the existential question that has intrigued philosophers, mystics, and curious minds throughout history. Is reality real? In this episode, we challenge your perception of reality and explore the boundaries of consciousness. We'll look at questions such as, is reality fixed? Are you real? And can what comes and goes be true? We often perceive the world as something separate, tangible and objective. But what if our understanding is limited? What if there is more to reality than meets the eye? Join us to find out more and enjoy the show.
Hello everybody, welcome to The Illusion. Hi Gems.
Welcome. This doesn't actually exist. How is everybody? Yeah, very good. How are you?
Yeah, great, thank you darling. Yeah, looking forward to diving down the rabbit hole of the doors of perception.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one. Really excited actually. We spoke just before and I've got all these ideas popping into my head after you said some things. I'm like, okay, wow. Yeah, there's a lot to look at tonight for sure.
Yeah, good. To share what we're going to share tonight. I think the title is really interesting. We're looking at illusion. It's not always an easy thing to talk about, so you'll have to bear with us. It's kind of trying to speak about the invisible or the infinite with the finite, and down to this deep level that we're going to go to tonight. It's kind of, sometimes it's going to probably just get a bit quiet. So if it does, just go with it. You know, we're meant to have some silent spaces.
And like always, if you guys have got any questions, if anything comes up during the time that we're talking, please message me if you don't want to speak on the actual space, or just request at any time, because I think making this interactive and having different people's points of view and questions is really going to open it up. So really looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I think this subject as well tonight is like, you've all probably got your own ideas about it or something to say about it. So it'd be really good to get some people up to share what they think about what perception is, how they perceive the world, what they think of the illusion. So we'd love that too. So yeah, please put your hand up at any time if you want to come up.
Yeah, so thank you all, and really interesting. Got some questions already, but really interesting to see what you're going to cover, Molls, and I'm going to be very much listening out to see what I can come back with and ask you afterwards. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Good. Okay, well everyone, as usual, leave what you know at the door, leave your intellect at the door, come to a space of not knowing. You know, we really want to touch the space of the unknown with these conversations and with these calls. Again, what we always speak about is challenging to the ego. It can feel uncomfortable sometimes. It can feel blissful. We never know what we're going to get. The principles that we talk about are subtractive. They're about taking away from the mind. So we can often try, when we're listening, to compare things to other things. If you find yourself doing that, just drop it. You don't need to compare it to anything. You don't need to work it out. This isn't something for the mind to work out. This is a deep listening. That's what we're after, this real depth of hearing. Like when you kind of drop out of your intellect sometimes and listen to music or listen to nature, it's that feeling that we really want to get, that we really want you to feel. Because everything that we're talking about is in the feeling. It is in your own insights. It's in what you see through this. It's not always what we say. It's what you hear and what comes up for you. It may allow you to see things differently. You may just have a moment where you go, oh, that's different to how I thought it was. But that's you seeing it differently. We're just pointing to something that's true all the time. We're like guides. We just point you home, because what we're pointing to is what's already within you. It's who you already are. There isn't anyone that isn't this understanding, that isn't these three principles, that isn't these energies behind life. So with that in mind, I want you to just take a moment to think about, who are you? You know, are you this meat suit? Are you these thoughts? Are you this body, these cells, this mind? You know, is that who you really are? You know, what is life? How does life work? You know, what does it mean? It's these bigger questions that so much richness is found. What is real? Is what you believe to be real really real? Because when I've come up and started questioning these things and looked towards these things, which I actually did from a very young age, which I'll talk about earlier, is this question of reality, this question of, is this really fixed? Is it really true? Is it really solid? What is matter? And then, why are you all here? Why do we search for this meaning? What is it within us that makes us want to know more about who we are? For most people, there are these questions. They do come up. We do want to look within. We do want to look even outside of ourselves and wonder, what is the universe? What is infinity? What is this thing called life? And there's so much to be found in those questions. Is it fixed? Are you real? Can what comes and goes really be the truth of who we are? And we see that everything about our form, about our finite self does come and go. Everything within our thought system does come and go. All of our feelings do come and go. So it's, what are you? You are consciousness appearing over and over and over again. Explore that. You don't have to take what we say as gospel, as truth. It's always about exploring it for yourself. Look at these deeper questions and look at how we've got it wrong, how we look to fix the illusion, to feel better, how we look to find peace or well-being through more self-confidence, more self-belief, more self-esteem, all this selfing. And what if it isn't in the selfing? What if there's another direction to go in to really feel better? What if it's not in trying to fix the illusion that can never be fixed? What if it's in seeing that it's an illusion that wakes us up to who we are and gives us a much better experience of being who we are? Now, I don't know the answer to all these questions I'm asking tonight, by the way, but I do know the benefit and the value in exploring them. I do know the benefit of bypassing the intellect, exploring something deeper, and I know that that's where peace is revealed. So I'm not sitting here saying I absolutely 100% know the answers. We're not here to know the answers. But boy, is there a lot of juice to get out of the exploration. That's what we're here for. The only thing that wants a finite, definite answer is the intellect. And for those that have been on the calls before, that we're slowing the intellect down with this understanding. We're coming home. We're beginning to see that thought isn't true. We're beginning to observe the self. We're beginning to see that we're not separate, that we are one. And we know that we get so much from that conversation. I love the title, The Doors of Perception. That's come to me my whole life. It started with reading Huxley when I think I was about 17 when I first really started exploring this stuff. And the doors of perception. And his quote is, when the doors of perception are cleansed, we see life as it truly is, infinite. And I remember that. And then William Blake wrote, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. There's so much that points back to what we see, why we see it, and this question of, is it true? All of you that are here wouldn't be here without part of you having been on that exploration or wondered about that exploration or being interested in that exploration. Of seeing that some level that this is an illusion, that so many teachings have pointed to it. I think, is it Maya, the Eastern philosophy? It's the grand life is Maya. What does Maya mean? It's a grand illusion. Now, I know it's like, oh, well, but we have a physical being. We have cells. We have a body, of course. The illusion isn't made of nothing. It's made of something, clearly. But what we get to experience of the illusion is the form. We experience the finite. So we get really caught up in the form and the finite because we have our senses. Our senses are our gateway to experience. And we look at that experience and we think, oh, that's outside of us. That's what's forming the experience, is the outside world, because I feel the outside world through my senses. What we're not seeing is all of that is coming from us. It's not an outside in, it's an inside out. The whole system is one that's coming from a deeper space. The world can't exist without us. So the illusion is made of something. You know, science points to that. It has a reality. And it has value because we want to be human. We want to have this experience. We're here to be human. But there's so much value in simply being. There's so much value in also seeing that everything has come from nothing. So when we explore that, when we touch that, we see that everything just is. I am. You are. The beingness of who we are. As I said, we're still human. We still get caught up. We still have these human experiences. But the peace that we're looking for in the human experience is actually already contained within us. It's before form. And this world that we look at and these other people that we interact with, that we see with the eyes of separation, we see that it's outside of us, or we perceive it's outside of us. We think it exists in its own right, separate from and independent of awareness, or separate from consciousness. But the whole thing is coming from consciousness. It's one thing. Think about your experience. You cannot be separate from the experience that you're having. I cannot be separate from the experience in the moment that I'm in. It's my moment. It's my experience. I'm at one with it. But we look at it as a separation. We get so caught up in the separation and we forget that it's one thing. We can't have an experience without consciousness. We forget that. You can't have a world without consciousness. So that, again, that points back to how we see it as an illusion. That doesn't mean to say our experience is an illusion, although there are spiritual teachings that point that deeply, that say that that is true. And I've had kind of glimpses that that could be true, that this is all actually a grand illusion. But, you know, for the sake of having the human experience, this illusion, this experience feels really real, as it should. And there's value in the illusion. There's the human experience to be had in the illusion. Now, the exploration of this, as I said at the beginning, it's quite a hard thing to talk about. So we do the best that we can, but the experience and the seeing that it's an illusion, I think, can really begin when we begin to see that our own thinking is an illusion, that we see thought is an illusion. Because as we begin to see our own thought is an illusion, we then begin to question the world. There's a lot to get from questioning the world. It loosens up experience. It loosens up our fixed nature. It loosens up the character. We begin to get more into flow, more understanding. You know, we don't have these conversations just because they're nice and they put us into a good feeling, which actually is a great enough reason to have them. We also have them because they're incredibly practical in life, because we get to have a better experience of being alive. But seeing thought is definitely the gateway for me for seeing the illusion. It's again why we do this, because seeing the illusion, cleansing the doors of perception, we begin to see the infinite nature of who we really are. Before the idea of who you think you are, before the form, before the character, before you were born, what is that? There's an energy there. That's what we're pointing to. You know, in Huxley's book, he does it through psychedelics. You know, the doors of perception is brilliant. I haven't actually read it for a long time, but I kind of briefed up on it today. And I remember it blowing my mind. And he describes a vase of flowers as a miracle, moment by moment. Like, I think it's naked existence. Just looking at something so simple, because he sees its isness, because he sees its beingness, because the psychedelics have cleansed that door. I'm not saying everyone should do psychedelics. I mean, I did them in my youth. I haven't done them for many, many years. But I know for me that was a real opening up in my youth to see things completely differently. But I know I've also seen them completely differently just through exploring the inner world without any help from any substance or anything, just through contemplation, through, sitting and listening to teachers. So that experience is actually on the table without drugs, absolutely 100%. And actually think to do it without drugs has a more powerful effect. But there's no denying that psychedelics do create this opening. We begin to see the illusion. For Huxley, it woke all that up with him. He completely saw the world differently. He began to understand these spiritual teachings. And what's interesting for me is I had the psychedelics experience probably 17, 18, 19, those kind of years. And then I went on spiritual quests and trying to understand and really explored enlightenment and the illusion. And I have to say the most powerful experience I had was in my 40s, was just from an insight that came through me. It wasn't through drugs. It wasn't through, particularly in that moment, seeking anything. I was just reading a book and I had a huge awakening. So that potential is already within us. It's not something outside of us. And it's interesting, I searched outside of myself for it for a long time. So I think what's lovely is to point to is that the ascension, the awakening, the enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, it's already inbuilt, it's already there. And I think that's really wonderful to know, because it's not in the doing that it's going to come and you're going to see it. It's just in the beingness. In fact, it's the less of the self that gets involved, the more of the awakening I think is available. The self trying to awaken is the self getting in the way of awakening. It's so paradoxical, this stuff. But yeah, back to Huxley, what he saw just blew his mind open. He began to understand these spiritual concepts. And again, for me, I thought I understood them, but when I had this experience in my early 40s of really waking up, it's like they all look different. It's like, oh, now I really understand what these teachers were talking about. I really understand these teachings that I explored when I travelled India and the East, and it was like I thought I understood them, but I didn't. I had a conceptual idea of them, that the way that I see them now, and I'm sure I could see them even more deeply. I'm not saying I've got to somewhere where I've seen it all and I know it all. I've seen it enough that I can kind of explain it and it's made my life better. But, what we're talking about is infinite. There's so much more to see. I've seen a paragraph in 100 volume of books. And that's what makes the exploration so rich, is because there is always more to see. There's a lovely, I think it's Hindu concept, which is Satchitananda. And it's actually 3 words. Sat is existence or truth. Chid is the expression or the knowledge of it. And Ananda is the bliss that you get from it. And I used to hear that word in India and it was like, yeah, I get what that means. But now I get what it means. And yeah, that's so powerful, because the simplicity of it, I really complicated the shit out of this stuff. And now I see the simplicity of existence, of bliss, of truth. It's always there. It was always within me. It wasn't something outside of me. You don't have to do anything to get it. It will be revealed to you at the perfect time. But I do know these explorations and listening to these 3 principles, it's almost as if it begins to open us up for that potential. It's not in a doing, it's just in a listening and a being that creates that space for these personal insights, which are actually universal insights, to come through and make sense for us, to change our lives. Huxley, I think, said he lost his eye. He saw the oneness. He saw the interconnectedness of all things. He saw the moment. He said duration is replaced by perpetual present. Think about that, a perpetual present. That's what we live in. We lose it. We forget it. The mind grasps the future. The mind grasps the past. There's not much more that could be an illusion than our thoughts of the past and our thoughts of the future. They don't exist. Take this moment now and sit and think about the future or the past. Where's that coming from? There's no truth in it. It's not your direct experience in this moment. It's an illusion created by this amazing system that we have of a mind. And that mind can create the feelings to match. This whole system is making us think and feel things that don't even exist. And look how helpful it can be to see that, because then when we're getting unhelpful thoughts and feelings, we can catch ourselves, we can understand, we can begin to see, oh, I know what's going on here. That isn't true. That isn't happening now. I'm making that up. The gateway to the illusion. The doors of perception. It's not an outside thing, it's who you are. You are the gateway, you are the door. It's going through the gateway and through the door that we begin to see who we really are. We begin to see that perception belongs to the perceiver. It's so funny how we want other people to see it as we do. Why? We don't need that. Let them see it how they see it. Let them have their own experience. Why do we want to change someone's experience? And of course, life looks real because it's meant to. But questioning if it is a wonderful conversation to have. So what is real? What is real to you that might not be? What could you let go of that is unhelpful to you? If you saw that it was an illusion, if you saw that you were tied to the illusion, that you were making something up that wasn't true. And this has been looked at through philosophy, thousands of years. I mean, I'm sure going back even further than we can understand, this man has questioned his true nature. Why are we here? What's true? Plato's allegory of the cave. So I've been looking into that. I remember studying that years ago, and it felt appropriate for this conversation. And he uses it to discuss the deceptive appearance of what is real and what is not. So it's kind of like an allegory that it looks at what's abstract, what's real, how do we perceive it, how do we react to it. And what it is he wrote that there was a group of people, prisoners chained together inside an underground cave. Behind the prisoners is a fire, and between them are moving puppets and real objects on a raised walkway. But all the prisoners see, they don't see the fire, they don't see the puppets. They're chained and they're looking at the wall. So all they see is these shadows on the wall. That's their only reality. They spend their whole life, they don't know anything else but these shadows on the wall. They think that that is life. And I think it really points beautifully to how we can question what we see. Like, is it true? Just because we see it, is it true? Now then, that narrative goes on to ponder what would happen if the prisoners was forced to leave. I think one prisoner gets out, he comes back, and when he comes back in, he tries to wake the other prisoners up, but because they hadn't seen it, they don't believe him. They think he's crazy. Think it actually in the allegory, they tried to kill him because they don't want to be woken up from the illusion. And that's such a great pointer to the ego. In my opinion, that's what they're talking about here, is the ego doesn't want to wake up. It wants to believe the illusion. It's dependent on the illusion. It's so interesting to question and to see that this story that we make up of the separation of the self has been questioned forever. I think there's something within all of us, whether we recognize it or not, that questions reality at some point. Now, for some, it may be a dismissal because they don't want to wake up. It's too much for them, and for others, it can be an inquiry. And many don't want to wake up. I really do think that, and I know that from my work. But sometimes I speak to someone, it's like, just does not want to go there. But generally, obviously, most people that come and work with me do. You know, that's why they're here. But once we do wake up, we don't fall back to sleep. Once we get an inkling that it's an illusion, it tends to be a direction that we want to explore more and want to see more. Think about the Matrix. The whole thing is really based on Plato's allegory. It's looking at how convinced people are of the illusion, how some want to wake up, but how some are so happy in the illusion. In fact, one comes out and goes back in, he takes the pill to forget it all. You know, Morpheus says, what is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. But is it true? For us, why were we all so, or for most people, I'm sure there's some that weren't, but so intrigued and enamoured by a film like The Matrix? There's something in all of us that knows that this isn't quite what it seems. This illusion, this life, that there's a feeling of something more. And when we touch this space, the mind's logic gets challenged. That's why we love it. And the logical mind's great. It's really handy to have. You know, I'm not dismissing that it's not great to have a mind. Of course it is. But when that gets challenged, when that sees something deeper that it can't process, something happens and the insight comes. So I call it a mind melt. Sometimes I'll hear something or see something and my mind just stops. I can't work it out. It just melts. I love that because it's like, oh, well, my mind can't interpret this, so I must be seeing something really deeply. I'm probably not going to know what it is, but I know the feeling. I know I've touched a space before who I think I am that is going to somehow rewire me or change who I think I am in some way. And I'm not in charge of that. That's just going to happen. But I see it. There was the point in the Matrix for me was there is no spoon. There is no spoon. And then I was like, there really is no spoon. And I saw it. Now my conceptual, intellectual mind can't get it. My mind will say, of course there's a spoon. But something deeper knows that there's not. And when you think about a film like The Matrix, anything is possible. Anything. Is that true for us too? What are the limits that our finite mind puts in place for us? We all love these ideas of going beyond, of doing more, of bending spoons. There's so much. It's even science I don't think science quite gets it because I don't think science takes consciousness often into consideration. But I believe that string theory says that the universe is a consciousness hologram. Now, I'm sure that for scientists, because everything has to be logic, it's very difficult to get to the point where everything's consciousness because it can't be seen, it can't be tasted, it can't be touched, it's invisible, it's the creator of all things. But for spiritual teachers, that's just a given. But you can see that there's this point where it could all meet. And what would that mean? What would that look like? So then think about what moves you. What transcends you? What have been the moments in your life where you have fallen away from that intellect, where you have touched something deeper, where you have had that sense of oneness, of bliss, of love, of peace? You may have attached it to an outside thing, but that was your attachment. It actually came from you. It came from inside. What is that? What was that? Again, I don't know the answer. I know the value of the exploration. What can you see? What can you explore? What can you inquire to that is going to expand this conversation for you? It's going to allow you to see more deeply who you are. And it's everywhere. I said about philosophy, movies, pointing to this illusion. We get so enamored by it. There has to be a reason why. I mean, even as a child, my favourite nursery rhyme was, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. It's being pointed to, we're being told it from a very young age. It's who we are before who we think we are. It contains inner riches that don't end, that can be experienced, that are insightful, that allow us to fall in love with life and allow us to experience, as Huxley said, the miracle of a vase of flowers. That's there. That doesn't come from intellect. That doesn't come from overthinking. That doesn't come from thinking we should or we shouldn't be a thing. That comes from touching something far deeper than who we think we are. Then that revelation comes, that insight comes, and the whole world looks different. Without the world changing, that shows it's an illusion. My world looks different when my inner world changes. Wherever I am is how my world looks. That, again, it shows us, it's pointing to it. I'm going to end with a quote, and it's from David Icke, who some of you may know, not know, may like, may not like, but it's brilliant. And it's, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see the real you, or what you have been conditioned to believe is you? The two are so, so different. One is an infinite consciousness, capable of being and creating whatever it chooses. The other is an illusion, imprisoned by its own perceived and programmed limitations. Gem.
I feel like I should be saying good morning, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Like, literally feels like we are in the Truman Show. Wow. That was amazing. Really amazing. Thank you. Bloody hell.
That's really funny because in my notes I've put the Truman Show. I just didn't talk about it. So, yeah.
I would telepathically connect if we were one. We just do each other's bits anyway. But God, quite a few things came to me then. I mean, first of all, like with perception, I guess that's how two children can come out of a home and have, one of them sees it as a very bad experience, one of them sees it as a neutral experience, and they both grow up with completely different ways of perceiving things. That was something that really sort of hit me as you were going through. But one thing that I have conversations with other people about this, and it's something that I guess the intellectual brain always tries to figure out, but the whole time and space is a man-made construction. I think that is extremely interesting, but also as soon as I try and figure it out, it's like, that can't be happening. So I would love if you could explain a bit more how, I think it goes back to one of the Neville Goddard quotes we spoke about a while ago, how the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. Everything that could ever happen and will ever happen is happening right now. But it's us that stops us allowing to be able to see it through our own limited beliefs. I would love if you could explain a bit more about that.
No, I'll give it a go. Well, the time, space and matter one, I think Sid Banks put beautifully. It's reality is a construct within the bounds of time, space and matter. So that's it. That's all reality is. It's an illusion. And the illusion has to take place within time, space and matter. Otherwise, we can't experience it. Because otherwise, we'd just be consciousness. There would be no human experience. There would be no experience of separation. It's a necessary thing. Everything happening all at once over all times is also, it's so hard to explain, is also, I think, true. You know,
me too, but I can't understand it. Just like open house, if anyone has any input and like anything to do with quantum physics or anything like this, like please come up, because again, it's a great conversation and it's something that I talk about this more than the weather, would you believe, in the UK, because it is so big. And once you just start to get it a bit more, it's like, wow, okay, but it is huge, isn't it?
I mean, beyond. It's everything. Beyond. I mean, it's everything. But I don't think we're meant to totally get it. I think it's wonderful that it's a mystery.
It is. Well, we have got Josh that's requested
And every time Josh comes up, he gives fantastic information. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear what Josh has got to say. And then I'll go on to another question that I've got. But hi, Josh. Lovely to have you.
Hey there, ladies. How's it going, everyone?
Hi, Josh.
So can y'all hear me okay?
All good.
So that I actually dove down the rabbit hole a few years ago on this subject matter a bit. And it's science actually gives us some data, some proof that all this stuff, some of these intangible things like this in the connections that we have with other people, like string theory, quantum physics. So when we look at the theory of relativity and we look at quantum physics, what we're starting to find in science now, general theory of relativity is actually incorrect. In quantum physics, the things that shouldn't make sense, the things that are contradictory to themselves, that's what we're finding is truth. So dark matter, people, what is that? Everyone thinks it's this thing that doesn't exist. It's this huge, giant, epic mass. It's electricity. It's electromagnetism. So scientists have done studies. They've done, they have electromagnetic devices that, they can measure the strength, direction, flow. They can measure very accurately electromagnetic fields that are generated, where they're generated from, and some of the things, how these electromagnetic fields are generated. And then once these electromagnetic fields are generated, there's a lot of frequencies. You see a lot of frequencies happening in electromagnetism as well. So they take a device, you can measure from 40 feet away, there is a field that when your heart pumping in your chest, when your heart is beating, dum, 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 each thump of your heart is sending out a wave of literally electricity 40 feet in all directions around you. And that wave of electricity, electromagnetic, that pulse, that also has a certain frequency. Let's say that you just went on a run or something, so, your heart's going, or let's say you just got done meditating. Calm, slow, steady. That electromagnetic frequency, we can measure this with devices. That electromagnetic pulse that your body is putting off is going to have a certain frequency to it. So when your heart is generating 7.32 millihertz, I believe it is millihertz, megahertz. So 7.32, I can't remember, it's the specific tone, but the Earth itself. So the Earth is generating a specific constant frequency, 7.32. When the heart is generating that same frequency as the Earth is generating, so this 7.32 millihertz, constant, steady electromagnetic pulse that's coming from the center of the Earth, our heart syncs up with that, starts generating 7.32. And what we see, scientists, and these are clinical studies, this is professional, this is hard proof, this is undeniable facts. They have measured that when your heart is also producing 7.32 millihertz, your brain syncs up as well. So brain waves, for those of you who know about brain waves, there's beta, alpha, delta, theta. And your different levels of perception, your different levels of awareness, your different levels of wakefulness, and that is directly what brainwave is, the most dominant brainwave that is occurring at that time. So when your heart syncs up to 7.32, your brain also syncs up into 7.32, and you literally your body falls into that flow state, because alpha brainwave 7.32 is what scientists call, the flow state, or just a lot of the flow terminology is used with that alpha brainwave activity that they've seen. Even further, what is more interesting with it, so bringing quantum theory and string theory, when our bodies are producing these 7.32 millihertz frequencies, And all of our different parts of our bodies, our different organ systems are literally getting synced up with themselves. And, we're literally getting back into alignment. When our body's doing that, well, we're influencing for 40 feet around us, at least, that everything around us with that same frequency. So guess what? Those things start to fall into frequency with us. So even in this call right now, we're sitting here, maybe there's an animal next to you, there's a friend, a family member. Those people don't have to be listening to what you're listening to. You just sitting there, you don't have to be even in the same room, but you listening to this, let's say when Molls was talking, just you were having a profound moment. Well, literally your body was radiating that. The person in the room, your, furry creature, they were lining up, they were syncing up with you, and they were in a, you were connecting with that person, with that connection, just a lot of fun stuff with quantum physics. But, science has actively recorded and proven beyond a doubt that electrical impulse, all of our experiences are just memories. If taste is just electrical impulses that are firing between brain cells. Like, the electromagnetic nature of the universe is a lot more dynamic. And when you open your mind up to allow that to be more, science has said a lot of interesting things about electromagnetism, and that is directly what connects us in those frequencies. There's a lot of stuff about that. Oh, last thing, within a magnetic field, this is one of the most craziest things that we know about quantum physics right now. So within a magnetic field, we have the solar system, you have the sun, you have the Milky Way galaxy. Anywhere that there's this giant magnetic field that is being generated within our heart, there's a 40-foot magnetic field around us at all times. And there's all these different fields of electromagnetic balls, essentially, within the sun. So we have seen atoms disappear from right by Mercury and reappear out by Pluto. We have absolutely no idea how instantaneously a molecule is able to literally disappear and reappear hundreds of billions of miles away. The only thing they can say is because those 2 points in space exist within that same magnetic field, there's a connection between those 2 points in space, that literally those 2 points in space are one because of that greater field that is created and generated. So yeah, that's science proves it. Science, Molls, Gem, science has your back on all this.
Josh. Thank you. Yeah, I've heard that before, that these molecules kind of can travel, but it's not in our time frame. It's like it's instant. According to how we observe it, it's instant, and everything changes based on observation as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting subject. It's definitely not my area of expertise, but everything is, as we said earlier, a reflection. Crypto Italia message, and he said something wonderful, which I really love. And it's, we are scattered parts of the manifestation of the same unfolding unity, yet preserving the whole. While our bodies keep dividing through evolution, our consciousness keeps us together as one unites living thing. Most of our mental problems generate from that division. So thank you, Crypto Italia. I like that very much as well. Thank you, Josh, as well, for speaking. It's really interesting to hear other people's views and how they see it. When we come together like this, it's really important that we do hear other people, and really, we never know what we're going to hear from somebody. We never know if it's the speaker or someone that comes up, a guest that comes up to speak, that you're going to hear something from within that's going to completely transform your life. What we do know is that it's important to keep listening. And we know that for a lot of you that are here or listen to the recording or listen to the podcast, that you do that, because someone actually messaged me last week and they went, oh my God, I get the repetition now. Like, I've been listening for 3 months and sometimes I'm like, well, this is a bit repetitive. And then I heard it's in the repetition that you get it. And I'm like, yeah, it's in the repetition because it's actually when you're ready to hear it, you'll connect with it, your insight will be there. So even though that's not quite true, that it's in the repetition, it's in the fact that when you're ready to hear it, you will. But we can't say anything but the truth over and over and over again. When you're ready, that truth will appear from within you, and you will have a new way of looking at the world. And again, it won't come from a doing, it will come from a being, it will come from a listening, it will come from an opening that is revealed within you because you have dropped out of this separation and you have dropped out of the intellect. You are beginning to see something differently.
Yeah, it's such a kind of different understanding. It's not like, oh, I know how to do fractions now, so I now understand how to work out those equations. It's like, oh, I need to relearn how to do fractions every couple of hours. It's like, wow, you really need to embrace and sort of brainwash yourself. But yeah, that was very beautiful, Cryptotalia. Thank you. And also thank you to Josh for coming up and explaining that. Quite a lot of it went over my head, but it's made more sense when, you know, when a human explains it to you and you can ask questions rather than watching YouTube videos or whatever it may be. But one thing that comes up for me a lot is, so what we're talking about is completely different to what I or we see in the outside world. There is so much control, tyranny, so many rules. And so what I'm questioning is, does that actually exist? All of this government control and the things that I see, is that actually happening, or am I creating it?
Oh, what a great question. You could have warned me about that one.
Well, I need to bloody know because I think about it every day. But to go further, so, you know, it's conversations I have with people, like we speak about this, I speak with other people about this, but is it true to all of us, or am I making you up as well?
It exists. Of course it exists. We can see it in the world. But how much it exists to you depends on how much attention you are giving it. So its existence depends on your attention. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I give that a hell of a lot of attention, what's going on in the outside world in regards to, you know, I want to make change and this. So it's, I suppose, if you take away the layers, do you need to work so hard? Because it doesn't, you know, it's a huge one.
I think we're going to the paradox there. I think we're going to the fact that, yes, it's an illusion. Yes, it's a very persistent illusion. I think, was it Einstein said that? Reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And we have this beautiful space that we can go to where everything is made up and we feel bliss and we're peaceful, but we also live in this world that has challenges. So I think it's about, we don't want to spiritually bypass and deny that there's stuff going on in the world that we want to change, but we have a really beautiful place to come home to know that we are fundamentally okay and that everything is okay and everything is unfolding as it should be. So it's both. I think that's the best answer.
Right. I like that. But if I just start thinking that the WEF are wonderful, we're not going to get world peace. Though.
No,
Like that.
Well, who knows? What if everybody did? If everybody did, would that change what they are? I mean,
global consciousness.
I do think there is something about the collective consciousness that can make a difference. But I think for the world that we live in and the separation that we see, of course, it looks like there's something for us to do. And often there is, you know, but understanding who we are allows us to not get so caught up in it that we are ruining our day-to-day lives over thinking about it, which is lowering our consciousness and actually unhelpful.
It's quite amazing because, yeah, as you were speaking, Josh, when you were talking about the hertz and the different frequencies, all I kept hearing was, you know, the word universe. What does that actually mean? Is that all of us putting our energy into one direction, a united verse of like song, vibration, frequency, that kind of thing? So I think that there's so much to explore, but we do have Nagato who has requested to speak. Nagato has been a friend of the show forever and has supported us and has donated to the project. So thank you for requesting and lovely to have you.
Hi, Nagato. Thank you.
I've been thinking about the subject a lot, to be honest. And I think basically it can be it's both things. Like it can be both an illusion, like the physical reality, but it's also consciousness. Like it's both things. As humans, we have senses, and like vision has from 300 to 700 hertz. Can see a spectrum of colors and all that. So we can't see physically beyond some things like that. But also we have awareness and consciousness, and I think obviously the government exists, but it's not like if it's one thing, only physical or only spiritual. It's both things. And this reminded me of astrophysicist, a Greek astrophysicist, who was saying that it's all one, like all matter, like a table might have holes, it's not a solid thing. But with our eyes, we can see it as something stable. He also mentions how each person is also one, like, because the title today is Doors of Perception. Like with psychedelics, you can feel that everything is one sometimes. And then when you come down from it, you also see it as separation. But what that astrophysicist said is that when you realize that everyone is one and we're all connected, this makes you see other people as the same as you. And he pushes that beyond to a philosophical level. And he says that if all people start seeing it like that, then you don't see the other people as separate, but you see them as you, so you treat them differently, and the whole world becomes better.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah. And it's so true. And that's, again, such a huge point of the conversation is when you see we are one, you see that you are the other, then that compassion, that innate kindness comes in, because you begin to understand the true nature of life. There's the saying that a man truly understands life when he plants a tree that he will never sit in the shade of. It's that interconnectedness of all of us, of all things, that the deeper we go, the more we become one. The more out we go, the more we become the separation. But there's so much in seeing the oneness. And actually, there's a quote that I was going to read at the end, but it's nearly the end, so I'll read it now. And it's by Francis Lucille, a non-duality teacher. And its realization of oneness means being constantly open to the possibility that we are like two flowers looking at each other from two different branches of the same tree. So that if we were to go deep enough inside to the trunk, we would realize that we are one. Just being open to this possibility will have a profound effect on your relationships and on your experience of the world. And that's exactly what you just said, Nagato. It's seeing that is so fundamental to understanding who we are. It's fundamental to having compassion and love and understanding others. It's a very powerful thing. And it doesn't come through concept. It doesn't come through that. It doesn't come through study of the mind. It comes through a deeper emerging of truth. And again, why we do these calls every week.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming up, Nagato, and totally agree with what you've both said. And I can't remember who said it, but it reminded me of a quote where they said, "We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are." And it's so true. We can, within a day, within an hour, however, the same situation or object or relationship can feel wonderful or terrible, depending on how we are. And it's always us that's the one that's changing. But yeah, wow. What amazing speakers we've had tonight. Thank you guys for both coming up, and thank you for messaging while we're on the call as well, Crypto Italia. I've really enjoyed tonight and think we could do a whole series on all the trippy stuff like this, but it all intertwines with what we do. It's with mental health and OneMinding. So yeah, just thank you both for coming up, and thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you for being here, and thank you to Vemp, who are our wonderful sponsor. And we look forward to doing this all again with you next week.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And I'm just going to leave you with a Rupert Spira quote, another wonderful teacher. And it's love is the natural condition of all experience before thought has divided it into a multiplicity and diversity of objects, selves, and others. So we are all love. Thank you, everybody.